All right. Yes. So I see that some of you already know how to play this game. I'm very curious before we start talking about design sprints. I'm curious to see on the design sprint practitioner scale, I called it. Take it with a grain of salt. Where are you in between being a baby ninja, meaning I am just starting out, I'm just starting to maybe learn, read about sprints, up to the deadliest ninja alive. I love that Jay brought it himself to the baby ninja. All right, we've got Rob and Steph somewhere at the deadliest ninja alive. We've got lots of folks in the middle. We've got some folks just starting out. All right, so we'll try to. I was just telling our speakers today that there's a lot of talk about design sprints, right? This isn't the first event that you probably attended around this topic. So how do we spice it up? How do we bring in those really juicy conversations? And speaking of that, this is a fireside chat. So this format actually allows everyone in the room to ask questions to our speakers and bring your cases, bring in your challenges, whether you're hosting design sprints and they're probably not working very well, or you're doing an amazing job and want to, uplift, feel free to bring in your questions. Use the chat throughout the session and we'll surface those for you. And then I'm also curious, what does the state of design sprints look like in your organization? And this it's a scale with 3 parts. We don't use them. Well, you are your own organization, Rachel, yeah? Or you use them, but they don't work properly yet. Like there's something, we feel that there's some pieces of the puzzle missing. Or we use them and they're game changer. Like we really use them properly. We're doing amazing with them. Let's see where we are on that scale. All right. All you have to do is hover over the image and stamp. Oh, Ying! So nice to see you here. Okay, so we don't have a lot of middle, right? So we are either just probably heard about them, but we're not really using them. We're not using them on a daily basis in our companies, in our organization, or we use them and they're a game changer. So I think we're going to come up with some brilliant conversations today. Okie doke. Let me kill the music. I'm leaving the scale still open for a while, so feel free to add your stamp. This session is being recorded and we're sharing it on YouTube. Feel free to keep uncomfortable. And then I want to do a quick pulse check, thumbs up, thumbs down. And the way we work with the thumbs in Butter is by using the React button to the left side of your screen. So give me a thumbs up if you know Butter, and give me a thumbs down if this is your very, very first time that you're in this type of session. All right, mixed audience. Again, we know you guys, we've been in Butter, we know Butter, we use Butter, but we also have some folks that are here for the first time. So you already discovered the reactions. Feel free to use them throughout the session as you please. No scarcity here, the more the merrier. Right below the React button, you'll find the Q button, which I'll demonstrate right now. So we use that in Butter to structure conversations. You can use that to ask a question, or you can pop that in the chat. And the chat is right below that, below the queue. And then if you want to take notes, we have 2 options. We've got a shared notes for everyone in the room. And then we also have our private notes where you can take your notes and they're for your eyes only, and you can send them directly to your email account. Alrighty, so the warm-up's over. Anna Maria, stop talking and introduce us to the speakers. And I'm going to first welcome Rob on the stage. Hey, Rob. Choop, choop, choop.
Hello, everybody.
Hi. And those of you that don't know Rob yet, or maybe you're not following him yet on LinkedIn, he's, I think it's safe to say that he's very well known in this world of design sprints. He brings nearly 30 years of building and leading teams as a digital product designer, time in which he has mastered and involved the design sprint methodology, to advance and implement innovative solutions for his clients' most vexing digital challenges. He's also a great ex-facilitator. He's using lots of rapid prototyping, innovation strategies, and he's leading the team at Leap to help customers all over the world, either remotely or in person, and to empower and enable product teams, which are their clients. So, Rob, thanks for accepting my invitation to share the stage with us once again.
Thanks for having me. Pleasure to be here.
Awesome. Next one up, Steph. Hey. Steph is the founder of Design Sprint with more than 15 years of experience in product and UX design. He is also one of the pioneers of the Design Sprint methodology in Europe and the main evangelist in the Switzerland. He is also the author of the Design Sprint Quarter, which is a 3-month strategy for transforming promising ideas into viable products. He helps startups and companies to rethink their working habits and to turn their promising ideas into products and services. I'm happy to have you with us, Steph.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much for the invite.
All right, and then we have the one and only Jay Malone with us today. Hi, Jay. He is the founder and product strategist at New Haircut. He coaches cross-functional product teams on strategic discovery methods that produce high-impact market opportunities. He and his team have produced several amazing products that you might want to check out, such as the Design Sprint and Problem Framing Toolkits, the Facilitation Mini Course, which I take myself, Facilitators Q&A video series, and the Innovation Leadership Accelerator. Also, the world favorite Design Sprint app, Duco. I hope I'm pronouncing that correctly. Is it Duco?
It's Duco, yeah. Thanks for having me, Anna Maria. Good to be here.
Perfect. Thank you for accepting my invitation, Jay. It's amazing to share the stage with your brilliant minds today. So I'm opening the chat here and inviting everyone as we start the conversation to any type of insights you're having, questions for our speakers, to pop them in the chat, and we'll make sure to pin them and ask away. So I have obviously a list of questions prepared for you guys, and I'm just going to kick it off. So as I mentioned already, by now design sprints or sprints in general are quite popular. And sometimes we have still, as we saw on the flashcards earlier, there are still some companies that don't use them, and some of the teams are still on the fence whether they're truly valuable or not. So I thought it would be quite fun for you guys to imagine us all here in the call as potential clients, potential customers, and to have you all one by one sell this methodology to us. How would you sell design sprints to us? Why should we care? Why does it matter? What is it? Why do we need this in our lives? And I am passing the talking stick to Steph, and then you feel free to pass it along into facilitation side to your other panelists.
Why should you do design sprints? Well, I think, I've built product for the last 20 years, and it's honestly the best innovation methodology I've seen. Innovation is super blurry, it's messy, you don't know where to start, you don't know where to go. And the sprint, it's that small island of clarity where you bring everyone together and you know what you have to do for the next week. So that's why I do sprint. What do you think, Jay?
I work with a lot of executives, and what I've learned over the years the hard way is that they don't care so much about the process or the tools. They care about the outcomes, especially if we're selling into like business leaders and stakeholders. So over the last year or so, I've been talking more about the outcomes that sprints provide. So I talk about things like expanding market share, acquiring new markets, diversifying revenue, increasing customer lifetime value. Not that a single sprint can do that, but it's a tool that unlocks potential solutions that you could bring to market. So I think, especially business stakeholders, they care about customer outcomes. They care more about customer outcomes that align toward mission, vision, strategy of the company as well. So I try to always talk in terms of the outcomes and the success that the business might achieve, and design sprints being a tool to help them get there.
All right, Rob.
Okay, yeah. Jay, you had some really good points there actually about it's not really about the process, but something that I've mentioned in the past is that, if you've got strategic leaders and they're about to plow a ton of money into something that's a bit of a gamble, really the sprint is the surefire thing of enabling them to not just waste tons of money. And then you can then talk to them about the process and then kind of sell them on that. But it's really just for them to have something that has data orientation, it's tangible, and it just gives them an understanding and an alignment together for their strategic team to really kind of stretch test that idea. And yeah, the sprint will enable them to get some results way quicker than if they were to actually start doing things the more traditional way.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
So I hear there's this potential to test out an idea without investing too much time, finances, energy into it, and check for validity. What is it that makes this framework so important or impactful, successful for innovation in general? I know that a lot of companies are using sprints to innovate services and products. What in that formula do you think makes the methodology very successful for this particular use case of innovating and coming up with new products? Jay.
I think, as much as sometimes we deny it, I think it's the speed, but not really the speed, the velocity that sprints allow us to. So speed is just kind of like rate at which we're moving. Velocity is speed going in a planned direction. And I think that is very exciting to companies that are stuck, taking a long time. Research and discovery is expensive. This is like a Trojan horse to change people's minds about what you can actually accomplish when you structure a set group of people's minds in a plotted direction. It takes a lot of planning to do it well, but I think velocity is one big wedge that makes it so exciting.
Anything else from Rob or Steph where you're standing that you say adding to that?
I would like to add something like from a European perspective, right? Because I'm calling from all Europe and I'm based in Switzerland, and it's very conservative in here in general. Like in the companies, it's not Silicon Valley, so they don't know how to innovate. They don't know how to spend the money for innovation. Basically, they are comfortable in operating what already exists, but when you have to invent what's gonna come, no one is comfortable with that. And I think the sprint is so pragmatic. Create these prototypes that you can test, you can show them. You can show them to your boss. So basically, you're gonna maybe get the budget for building the solution later. So yeah, I think it's so much stronger than a couple of slides of PowerPoint with like bullet points or an Excel spreadsheet. I mean, it's like, you can fast forward in the future and see how it's gonna look like, and you can convince people.
Almost like having a mock-up, right, of the thing you're looking to accomplish, touching it, seeing it, etc.
In what I've seen, it makes decision makers and people, it makes them courageous to venture into that innovation path where they wouldn't have gone because it looks too risky.
I would also add, we're in an age now where you want to differentiate your product team, the products that you're making. And to build disruptive products means that you have to come back to your core team. And this is what I often find is that even outside of the sprint, we're going back in and actually helping leadership teams really think differently about how they make these kind of disruptive products. And with a disruptive product, you need a disruptive process, right? So it shakes everybody up from their traditional ways of conceiving a product. So for me, that's kind of just how I would just add already to that conversation.
And it doesn't need to be totally disruptive products, but it has to be somewhat disruptive for the company. And sometimes the company is super, conservative, and they haven't innovated for the last 10 years. And for them, creating something new is disruptive for them.
Yeah.
Rachel says she's heard this term casual disruption. Anyone else? Does that sound familiar? Oops,
Yeah.
we stumbled into some disruption here. She's also asking a question, and I'm surfacing that because we're about right. We had this chat on how do we sell sprints and why should companies care about them? And Rachel asked, what are your thoughts about people who try to do free sprints as discovery? I believe this should be paid, although a lower price point as a starting point, but she's curious to hear your thoughts. She's all about sharing knowledge, but hey, there has to be a line somewhere, right? How do you feel about that, Rob?
Yeah, that's a really interesting one, right? So it's something that we wouldn't normally do because it can sometimes, I mean, there's two ways of looking at it, right? So you can either look at it as say you're starting a business and you need some case studies, then that would be a really good opportunity to do that. Or it could, I mean, I don't think you should offer one as a way of kind of going, well, this is a good way to move forward and this is your product. Because I think it can kind of devalue some of like it's like when you give something for free, sometimes there needs to be a monetary value for the value that you're offering, right? And sometimes when you offer free things, then it becomes a bit more flippant. So I would just say with caution, I would say never not do it, but with caution, I would say, give it some careful consideration before you would offer a free sprint.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. I have a coach that tells me what for free, how for a fee. So if you think about what a sprint produces, this is a bet that could potentially make, depending on the size of the company, 7, 8, 9-figure return. A vehicle that can get you to 8 figures should not be a free thing for the most part. And I speak from experience here because when we got into sprints and I didn't know if it was valuable and if I was going to get behind it, we ran a couple for free. And then I was like, holy shit, this thing is a powerhouse. And at that, my company at the time, a development company, could get the contract to build like a big platform. So I was like, yeah, give away this thing. And then look at us now, and we've actually completely flipped that around. We've moved away from development and we're all in on discovery and strategy, because I think that's the sort of the fulcrum, is figuring that stuff out can drive a lot of innovation.
Yeah, and I think you need also to think about yourself and your health. Just look at Rob and I. Like, we have white hair. We are 25. No, I'm kidding. We're not 25. But I mean, it's very hard, right, to run this kind of workshops. It's 5 days. It's or 4. It's super intense, and you should never work for free because it's hard.
I appreciate you not calling me old there, Steph. I don't know why.
Well, yeah, I just couldn't make the joke about the hair.
Rach, are we happy with that answer? Any follow-up questions? Anything at all?
Yeah, no, that was fantastic. That's really what I was getting at. I don't really work for free, but a lot of people tell me, no, you have to do that for free. I'm like, no.
Good. Perfect. Okay, I'm passing the mic to Paul for a question. Paul, it's over to you. Feel free to unmute and ask.
Hey, so I'm just laughing about the grey hair. So me and Rob have actually worked together for like over 20 years, and my hair's just recently started going grey as well.
It's so funny you being here, Paul. Thanks for joining.
No, I was just going to ask a question. So, I'm a big advocate of design sprints. I try and run them myself, but sometimes I think they can be ran for the wrong reason. I just wanted to try and get your idea about: is there a right, or do you have like a validity check to see, is a design sprint the right way to go with this issue or a client? Like, I try and use it to get in with new clients because it's a short engagement, something like we can just charge a cheap amount, and hopefully it'll drive more. But is a design sprint always the right way to go, and how do you judge that decision?
Mm-hmm. Good one.
That's me.
Anyone.
Anyone and everyone.
I'll jump in first then. So I have many conversations, and I guess that's where kind of Leap is positioned a little bit more uniquely, I would say, and that is that normally the conversations that we have, they already know like what the design sprint is going to be used for. And we tend to kind of really only really help companies with really complex challenges. But there have been a couple of conversations where it's like, okay, well then, maybe you don't need a design sprint because it's a big investment for, a relatively easy kind of gain. But I think it just comes down to, and I think Jay and Steph will probably be agreeing here, it just comes down to having a bit of experience and knowing how to have those conversations with those like product leaders, so that, you know, you don't kind of jump in and waste not just your resources and time, but also, you know, it can devalue the sprint as well. Like, you know, if you agree to do a sprint for the wrong reasons, then that can kind of almost set like a bad reputation, because then, you know, the client doesn't feel like they've got what they wanted, or it can just feel like, well, we could have just done a UX workshop on that and moved that button up, you know, above the fold, you know, like, to use a really simple example. But yeah, I think it just comes down to the conversation and just feeling also like, you know, when you get a new client, like sometimes there's like a pressure to go, oh yeah, like we want to do a sprint. And it's like, I think you have to just take a step back and go, right, do we really want to do a sprint for this? And is it going to really bring value for them? And is the challenge going to be something that that they're going to be happy with spending that amount of money on it?
Yeah. At Design Sprint Ltd also, we've made a decision years ago, basically, is not to compromise on what is a design sprint. So basically, we kept the 5-day format. And basically, if you want to sprint with us, it's like the full week, and it's basically the real deal. And of course, if people call it a design sprint when it's 1 or 2 days, then it's totally different. But we decided to kind of keep it real. And basically, the people who sign with us and go with us, they have something solid and something very important they want to work on. Otherwise, they will never commit the time, the money, and the energy to even organize that. So I think for me, it's a good filter, at least.
Yeah, I like that stuff. Sometimes like showing people the commitment that will be involved is a good filter for them to be like, oh, you need that much time from that much people. Okay, this should be something important. Yeah, I agree.
All right.
Thanks
How
a
are we
lot.
doing, Paul?
Good question.
No, that's good. It's helpful. So, no, I'm just having some conversation at the moment with our. I just recently changed jobs 6 months ago, and like I'm part of the global leadership team. So we're trying to drive the direction of the business and what we're doing. So I'm trying to push design sprints a bit more. So it'd be good to just, when I have these conversations, just know what I can say to try and push for a bit more. So that helps.
If you need a conversation with me, just like ping me, dude. I'll obviously help you with that. All right.
Yeah, I can definitely do that. Thanks, mate.
All right. Thank you, Paul. We've got Ying and Brian with the same question here. Would one of you want to come off mute and ask the question?
Hello.
Hi.
This is Ying here. I'm standing in my mobile kitchen. What I'm asking is, I sometimes find it difficult to be very practical in clearing the calendar for 4 to 5 days. So people go like, can we split it into two days? Which I've done. But I also find to be in a pressure cooker is also adds to the benefits. But and what I'm hearing is also, if it's not important enough, then why would we clear the 4 to 5 days? So how do you go about it?
Steph, you're nodding a lot. You got something fired up, ready to go. Go ahead.
Yeah, well, yeah, because I get this all the time, right? First is like to have a bit of visibility. So basically, when we organize a sprint, the client need to come at least, I would say, 1.5 months before, so that we make sure that they can find the time. And usually we don't compromise. We say it's 1 week, right? But what we have been doing with some success, I would say, because now more and more people, they work like 80% time, these kind of things. So what we do is like the first chunk is like the first 3 days, like the workshop part, and then we can do prototyping and testing the week after. But we always refuse to do just the first 3 days and not prototyping and testing. Otherwise, we say it's not for us. And so it's always a sprint, but it can be sliced into chunks. This works. Yeah.
Interesting.
Yeah, we did a lot of experimentation. Actually, we tried to go in the complete other direction just to see how it would work, because we work with a lot of corporate teams, and we kept getting pushback that we're like, we have 3 other like mission critical things that we have to do at the same time as this sprint, even though we had booked it out like 2 or 3 months in advance. So we actually ran it, not just a design sprint, but like many parts of our process over the course of a quarter, and a quarter turned into two quarters, because like the more time we inserted, the teams kept finding more things to do. So actually we went back to original and just really trying to stay set within like at least a 2-week time boundary that we can get what you would do in an sprint done. So back to the basics of what works.
Yeah.
Yeah, and this is interesting, and I was super excited to have Steph on this call as well, because you do the 5-day sprint, right? So some of you might know that I used to work at AJ and Smart, and like we kind of honed like the 4-day sprint. And for me, this is something that, you know, we consciously made this decision for a number of reasons, and primarily it was so that we only had that leadership team for the first 2 days. And then the rest of the team would then be asynchronously, you know, running the prototype or working the prototype and then doing the user testing. So for me, this is something, you know, back in the early days, we would not, you know, we tried every kind of derivative of like that kind of version. And, you know, we basically came up with a formula that works. That formula is the foundation to the leap sprint. I've added a few other things to it, but I will refuse to actually break up that time. And, you know, even when it came down to the pandemic and we were, I actually don't even really mention days anymore, because like, even especially in a remote sprint environment, like, you know, the 2-day format is spread over 3 days anyway, 3 like half days. So it kind of becomes almost like, back to Jay's point, like the process, it doesn't matter, right? Like, it's just, they want a result at the end of it. And, but it's like, you know, we had, you know, we gave pauses in between things. And actually, you know, I think that's really interesting point to highlight as well. And that is that if you have this momentum, you know, you're committing to kind of like, you know, wowing them and giving them the results within a number of days as well. And I think when you start to stretch it out, not only do people change their mind, which goes against all the principles of a sprint, they start to rethink and overthink things. And then by the time you come to kind of do the prototyping, then you're looking at something completely different. So yeah, this would be kind of where I would just say, just stick to the product, have them commit. Like, it's a big commitment. So the other thing as well is, if this is going to be an initiator for a new product that's going to be, you know, a dev cycle for a year and, you know, at least, I think these people can commit 5 days or 4 days to this and be all in on it.
This topic is so interesting. We kept the 5-day because it makes it easy, basically, to translate from the book that's here to what people are going to experience, right? Also, we can have shorter days. And I have a special trick for you. Basically, I tell them the first 3 days, they are mandatory for the whole team. So that's the workshop part. Then prototyping and testing, we don't need the whole team. If you are busy, you don't need to prototype or you don't need to watch the test. You know what? Usually I have half of the team who is supposed to attend prototyping and testing, and for real, they are so hooked after the first 3 days that they stay. And for me, that's the best win. I'm like, that's so cool.
Yeah.
Thank you.
So cheesy.
That is
Ying,
awesome. Thank you.
Yeah, cool. And since we talk about the structure, I'm going to plug in Yarina's question, and then we'll go back to Rachel and Krisa's questions. Yarina, do you want to come off mute and ask your question, maybe?
Thank you. So basically, since we're talking about the AG Smart, it's very interesting because I saw in the video that they are like selling the design sprint with 1 week of research, and then they have like an iteration week and then a part week for handover, like deliveries and so on. So I'm very curious to hear your thoughts on that one. I'm not sure about the iteration week because I think sometimes it might not be necessary, but what about the research? I mean, how do you think this is important and should be, you know, sold for the customer, or it should be just, you know, like a fixed price maybe, and then you do research on your own and don't even tell about that? So very curious. Thank you.
So many answers to this question. I actually don't know where to start, but it's to go from top down, it's very easy. So I also run the 4-week kind of version of that product. Okay, so we used to do 1 week design sprints, and what we found was the data that we were uncovering was like incredible. But we were kind of going, well, this is the data, over to you guys, like dropping the mic and walking off stage. Yeah. And actually what we found was that, you know, this is where we had so many kind of rabbits kind of in headlights kind of scenarios. You have this momentum within 5 days, and then you're expecting them to know what to do with that. And we found that actually the iteration sprint was just a way of which we could kind of, we can showcase our kind of product team's expertise, act on the actual data that we had discovered, and actually help them kind of move forward. We're kind of like putting our money where our mouth is, if you want to put it that way. And what it meant was that then when you go into the handover of the sprint, we don't do just UX recommendations off a sprint. We actually make product recommendations from our product team's experience. And this is actually what they're buying into. And that is that, you uncover the actual sprint, the actual product, and the challenge. You make 2 awesome prototypes, and there's such a difference in the prototypes between week 1 and week 2 as well. And what we often find is that that second week's prototype, it's still not the actual product as well. And I think this is another topic of conversation for another time as well. But you're just giving them a greater and more expansive understanding of what this potential of this product can be. And then when we go into the handover week, we're actually solidifying a lot of that data that we get from week 1 and week 2, and actually showing in the extreme situations where maybe you have to have a pivot because the business model didn't work for that initial sprint challenge. It means that the iteration sprint encompass that, but it also gives the team a lot more hope and tangibility of like how they can make these kind of more quick kind of product decisions and actually have something that they can move forward with. But I spoke to Jake many times about like where the 5-day sprint kind of slotted in with the whole, like, why don't you do research? Why don't you do benchmarking? Why don't you do competitive analysis? Like, why don't you do all these other things? And he was like, well, no, the team should be doing this, but the sprint is not like a thing that you bolt in and it's an elastoplast for like an open, like for a broken leg. It's something that you would put into something else. And this is where I've taken a lot of ownership in the leap sprint, and that is that it's one of many things that typically people buy into. And the research that we do is kind of like the quick and dirty of like, okay, understanding who the competitors are. It might be that we go into like more design thinking kind of aspects of like empathy and understanding who the end users are, and actually interviewing those people, or many different demographics of those people. And it also enables us to then identify from a human centric perspective, like where they are having pain points. And then we can then go into the sprint with not just assumptions. I call them loaded assumptions, because we now know where there's an opportunity, because we, the product team, and some of the actual client product team as well, we can then start going, well, we've got ideas for how we can solve for that. So it just means that the sprint is very cold and very business orientated for this business validation, but then you're kind of really encompassing kind of like this design thinking approach of like the end user into it as well. So that's where like the 4-week thing, it gives you a much more expansive understanding of like this rapid innovation framework.
Mm-hmm.
Sorry,
thank you so much. This was a great answer. Thank you.
Good question.
Yeah.
Thank you, Yarina.
Thanks.
Okay, Chris, are you ready?
Hi everyone. I apologize. I do have a couple questions. Rob, you did mention that it's best to go into a sprint knowing what you need to do, and you're more successful that way. So I did want to follow up and ask, how do you prepare your clients for design sprints? Like, what are the types of questions that I should be asking before even suggesting these sprints?
Was that to me?
To all of you.
Oh, I'll let someone else go first, because that was a long answer from me just now.
What kind of questions? Well, I try to get them to talk about the objectives for the business, less so about the sprint, because a lot of the time they don't know what to expect of what's going to come out of a sprint. I tell them prototypes and recorded interviews and things of that nature. So I try to get them talking about objectives. I try to ask them about why now, like what's going on in the company, that now is the right time to be doing this. Where are they headed as a group? What are they worried about? What would feel like a waste of time coming out of this process? Especially for someone that has a lot of authority and is worried about the time and the budget being allocated to this thing. So a moment for them to, just a little bit of therapy, a moment for them to kind of like check in on why they're approving this thing. I like to ask, questions like, what if nothing happens? Because sometimes groups get really excited about running sprints and then choose to do nothing. So I actually asked them to kind of like think through that. What would be true if we do nothing about this in a year from now? things of that nature.
Yeah.
That's great, actually. Yeah.
I tend to not over complexify the before the sprint stage because, if you over prepare or if you spend too much of time with your clients, they're going to start to bias you or to tell you too much of things, and you start not being neutral anymore. You become kind of like part of the team. So I really try to not over prepare, but like Jay said, I have kind of a quick filter just to see if it can be a design sprint or not. And quite frankly, I will say 50% of the time, just don't do a sprint, do something else, or But if it's a good candidate for a sprint, then I need two things. I need the sprint challenge, and usually we kind of like frame it together and we write it together. And I need the dates, and I need the team. So basically, it's what I'm really looking for prior to the sprint. And just talking about the challenge, who are the right persons for the team, and the dates, usually all these questions, they come and you answer them.
Yeah.
Make sense?
Yeah, totally. And also making sure the team are the right people as well, because that's sometimes the thing that's really overlooked. You go all into kind of like onboarding them, but actually understanding who the critical people are that are going to be in the sprint. Often we have big shakeups before the sprint even starts, and we have a conversation around, swapping people in, or maybe someone hasn't been considered. And that can also be, you're ultimately thinking of the success of the sprint, the outcome, and obviously those key people are going to be contributing to that as well.
Mm-hmm. And that's why you need to have the challenge first, because if you have the challenge, then you can ask who are the right people for this challenge. Yeah.
That was awesome. Thank you, everyone, for your answers. I guess leading up to that, Jay, you mentioned budget sometimes is a concern and scared for the client. What would you say is an average price for a design sprint?
We're going there, huh?
I think that's where we have to draw. What about a range from like this to here?
No, it's okay.
This is a safe space. This only goes on YouTube, guys.
I don't sell just design sprints. I sell actually maybe closer to what like Steph has built with his quarter long sprint. So I sell 12-week programs. The sprint, I run 3 sprints in that program, along with a lot of research and problem discovery. I sell that thing anywhere. I work with a lot of corporates, so I sell that between 90 and 150,000.
Yeah.
Robbie, do you want to go?
Yeah, I would just say as well, it just really depends like who it is, right? And if you're so I'm here in Miami at the moment. I'm with like my founding team now for a product that we ran a sprint for like a year ago, and they had literally like next to no money. And this was kind of one of those things where it's like, well, then you see kind of like an opportunity and equity and things like that, right? So there's those situations. And you also have, we would also never not take a payment as well, but it would maybe be like a smaller down payment. And then we have like your kind of big 4 clients of the world where, actually clearly like the sprint as we know it, or as some of us know it on this call of the 4-week sprint, that's also not enough, right? Because if you're looking at like B to B2C kind of potential products, then 2 weeks of sprints with 1 iteration sprint is not enough as well. So we actually play around with a longer engagement so that we get to kind of explore more of that kind of product experience as well. So yeah, that's also like a completely different price as well.
You didn't answer the question though. How much do you charge?
Well, we have quoted in excess of like 80 to 100K for some sprints.
Okay. We are cheaper than Rob. It's all what you have to know. No, I mean the right price is, so us, we have basically 2 prices. We have 1 price for the startups. We have three prices. We have 1 for the startups, 1 for sustainability projects, and we have 1 for like usually corporates. And basically we calculated it so that the agency can live 1 month with 1 sprint in Switzerland. So that's pretty much what we charge. So then you can take that rule of thumb and adapt it to your context or your country. So I guess if you operate in some parts of the world, it's going to be way cheaper than in Switzerland. And yeah.
That's awesome. I love that. I like that you guys mentioned it does definitely apply to different scenarios and different clients. So it does. The overall consensus seems like it's best to have that range of prices, but within packages, and seeing who the best package to apply to the person based on the scenario and the situation.
Yeah, but exactly. We have packages, but in some context. So basically startups, sustainability, and corporates. But then we are being very fair, meaning a corporate is going to have the same price than the other corporates. So we don't make difference. But yeah, we have these three packages.
Thank you. And I guess my final question, I'd love to hear your experiences about this types of sprints you do. A lot of the terms I'm hearing these days are VIP days or VIP weeks or VIP months. So I'd love to hear your experiences on more of a fun type of question, your best experience and your worst experience.
I think that was it. I think that was the question. I don't know anything about this VIP days, VIP sprints. What are these?
I don't know what that is either. So yeah, maybe just expand a bit more on the VIP thing, because that was news to me as well.
Sure. Of course. So I do come from a brand design and strategist industry. So a lot of the times, I'll see a lot of my fellow brand designers offering VIP days or VIP weeks, which means they'll offer a brand strategy and a logo design within a day or within a week, and they're able to create a full-on brand strategy within that week for a client. So what they do, I've seen that they do have a tailored experience for that client. And I was wondering if you guys had any experiences like that as well for product design.
Not really.
Yeah, I'm not super familiar with the topic. We have run some brand sprints. So basically, you can Google it. You will find a super cool article from Jake Knapp. It's called the brand sprint. It's on Medium, and we kind of follow that structure, and it works really well actually. So that's something you can try. I guess it looks like what you are mentioning.
Yeah. I was kind of thrown by the VIP thing, because like we only work with really senior leadership or stakeholder teams anyway. So for me, that's the only reason we'll actually, that's a good point. Like that's the only people that you should be kind of running a sprint with, because if you start to run sprints with like middle management, then it's likely that the success of, I'm sorry for the background noise, there's quite a lot of noise outside this door. Yeah, there's often, you then have to sell the outcome of the sprint back up to the senior team. And that's when you're likely to inherit some slight kind of problems with acceptance and engagement afterwards. So yeah, only work with the VIs if you wish.
Okay, I see. Thank you so much, guys, for your time to answer all of these questions. I appreciate it.
Good questions.
Thank you for the questions, Krisa. Brian, over to you. I have a question for Steph. It's like, ooh,
yeah.
What did I put in the chat? Let me scroll real fast.
No, I'm aware. What was it? No, it's specifically to Steph, because I'm leaning, and I'm actually, that he mentioned he has three types of clients. I'm actually leaning towards a model like that. I wasn't aware that it was what Steph was doing, but it's more related to the sustainability sprints that you're running. Mm-hmm. Have you tweaked the process specifically to those problems, or are you running the sprint as is?
Yeah, it's more sprints for sustainability. That's the right wording, I guess. So there are a couple of things that we might tweak a little bit, like, for example, for the mapping part, because the topics are a bit different, but generally it's like a design sprint, right? What we change for sustainability is, one, the price. We charge 20% less because it's these topics and it matters to me, and I want to work more on this kind of important topics. So that's one thing. And the other thing is that you have to get emotionally ready because they are sad. I mean, it's like when you look at the scorecard at the end of the week, they are the most read scorecards I've seen in my whole career. Because the problem is that you are not only designing a great strategy or product or whatever you are designing in that space, but you are also designing first, and you are kind of designing like with people who are not willing to change their habits. So, you just design something amazing, you run the user test, and people are like, no, yeah, it's great, but I'm gonna keep on flying, and you're like, it's hard to take. But yeah.
We also had we did a sprint for a sustainability initiative last year, and it blew my mind just like how you have these conversations like with the founder, and obviously you then potentially meet some of the potential investors for those projects as well, and it's like it's so hard to why are they finding it really hard to get funding when it's basically the future of our planet? And it's like some of the really sobering conversations where they've done their pitches to those investors, and it's like just a bit of a reality check for everybody. But yeah, we had one where actually the founder got really emotional on one of the interviews where they basically just said all the right things, and it gave them hope that this was an initiative that they should be kind of carrying on with. So yeah, that goes back to the question of the highs and lows, right? I think that was like when you see an emotional reaction from someone on a product team, whether that be a Fortune 500 or a startup, then that you've helped them, and you've helped them kind of materialize that vision much sooner. So that's a good one.
Yeah, I ran a sprint with some major beverage companies around improving recycling, global recycling programs, and it was just so frustrating because I was an environmental science major. So I was like, I have to step away because I'm getting way too like emotionally attached to all this. And they were just talking about policy and like bringing things back to like just things that would get stuck for years for any of the ideas that came out of the sprint to move forward. And I was like, man, I just want to go back to working with startups now. Like I needed to take a shower or something. It was very, very emotionally taxing.
Yeah. But it can be super rewarding too. Like if you give it some time, we've run a sprint with a startup called Climeworks. They are based in Switzerland. They have a crazy machine that sucks up the CO2 from the air. And I worked with them 4 years ago. And at the time, no one had heard about carbon offsets or this kind of stuff. And now it became huge. It's a huge market, and they're super successful. So you just need to give it some time, but you're never gonna have an amazing experience on Fridays. It's always a bit down. Yeah. Good question.
All right, Brian. You happy? Any follow-up questions?
Nope, that was it. That was impressive, actually. And thank you all because, sharing that, be prepared for not feeling amazed by the end of the week.
Yeah, it's really linked to this topic. But at the same time, at some point when you become a senior designer and you have designed for years, you want to design for what really matters and what is hard, right? You don't want to design chatbots anymore. I mean, everyone does that, right? So you want to go where it's hard, and I think the sprint is great for this kind of topics, actually.
Yeah. I'm actually leaning towards working in problems that really matter and that have a benefit for all of us because of experience that I had running a sprint in Peru, which was related to COVID. So, as a facilitator, you are a guide, not a hero. But by the end of the week, I was feeling like I saved the world. So
like a hero.
yeah. So I was leaning towards that now. Like, man, this is the type of work I want to do.
Love it. Thank you so much, Brian. And I think we've got time for 2 more questions. So, Paul, the mic comes your way.
Okay, so I thought I'd ask something a bit more topical, well, very topical at the moment, about artificial intelligence. So obviously, I'm sure we all use like ChatGPT, things like Midjourney a lot as part of our sort of day-to-day work now. But how do you see, obviously it's so fast-paced at the moment, the innovation area, how do you see that affecting design sprints?
Good one.
I've got a couple of ideas. There's a couple products that I'm really interested in. I haven't used them yet. There's one called Craftful, which promises to go through all of your research and produce back like the major insights that come out of it. I think like everyone talks about when they talk about AI, there needs to be human interaction to make sure that you're not just kind of like blindly pulling out insights from a machine and bringing it back. There's another one as well, which can prototype for you. So it can like crank out a whole bunch of different prototypes. I'm like everything else, I'm skeptical until I see it prove that it's going to actually work. But I'm looking at them for sure because
which is a prototype one. I've seen the one.
I'll find it. I posted about it on LinkedIn like 2 weeks ago. Just like kid in a candy shop, like holy shit, I can multiply my designers overnight. But like, of course, I have to look at it first. But it's exciting.
Yeah,
cool.
I think we're about to see almost like this is like the pre-phase of the people using these as solutions. And I think there's going to be a fixing round afterwards where actually they need to go back and readdress some of these things where some, you know, it's like Fiverr, isn't it? Like, you know, you can devalue design and you're getting designs for like very little money. And I think there will be a component where like this AI is kind of seen that way. And I think it can be used as an enabler, but it shouldn't be used as a solution.
Mm-hmm. No, I'd agree. I think like if you're doing really sort of bespoke work, which is like it won't really work so well. So you can always need designers, but I think it just will speed up our workflows. And I think with prototyping as well, I just see some of these tools now, like even my work, it's sped up my workflows a lot.
Yeah.
Mm. We have actually tried on several sprints because since ChatGPT was released, we had several sprints, and I was really like after day one, basically I was inputting everything from day one to ChatGPT to see if he would come up with a good answer, and you know what, it was crap. Like it wasn't anything that we could use basically. Like maybe it's the first idea that someone could have after the first 5 minutes, but it really wasn't deep enough. Then I tried again for prototyping, and I see, as JJ said, like there is way more potential there. But I spent like 2 hours with my prompt with Midjourney to try to get the right visual, and just my lead UI, he came, and after 15 minutes, he just nailed it, right? So yeah, I don't know. I think it's not ready yet, but definitely we need to be, to look at them very, very carefully. But I don't think the screen is going to be replaced anytime soon. And it's going to even bring more mess, I guess, in the decision process, because about data, about privacy, about so many things are going to come with AI. It's going to be messy.
I had Hannah on my team also. She looked into, like, obviously because we do like executive summary reports for like the handover, and whether, you know, you could use something like ChatGPT for like basing something on those recommendations. But I think what she found was that you put so much actually into guiding it, you could have actually just written the report yourself. And actually sometimes it doesn't really understand, like it just puts words together. It doesn't really give you something of like a recommendation, especially when you're kind of making product recommendations at a very senior kind of CEO level. You know, you have to change the business language anyway. And we found that it was like, yes, it gave you a few nice little hooks, but you still had to craft it in a way that a CEO would be able to understand it.
Mm-hmm. No, I'd agree. I think it's still early days, but I think 2-3 years from now, who knows what it's going to be capable of.
Yeah, exactly right.
Keep your eyes out for it. Keep an eye out. Okay, last question. Thank you so much, Paul. Ying, I'm heading over to you. You had 2 questions. You can pick one. Which one's going to be?
Choose correctly.
Choose wisely.
Choose wisely. Okay, I'm going to run with the last one. Okay. We've got 3 men here sitting in a hot seat. So I'm going to ask you guys, since the world is designed and for the men in the last 50 years, what do you do in your sprints so the product prototype and service prototype are inclusive and women friendly?
Ooh.
Interesting. Yeah, I try and have a good balance of a team. And we've gone into sprints where there's been very male orientated teams. There's not really much you can do about that, unfortunately. But I take a lot of pride in Leap and that we have a very kind of as much of a diverse team as possible with a small amount of us. So yeah, that's all we can really do.
Yeah, I tend to only hire women anyway, because I just I work better with them, and I think I don't know, I think there's, in general, they tend to be smarter and challenge me in different ways. So all the people that from my team that come with me I'm the only guy on the team. So
for us, like half of our team are women actually, and also when we compose the team on the design sprint, if I see that there's a lack of women, of course I will always point to that, and yeah, it's usually not an issue, at least for most of our sprints. But good point.
But I think the trickier one that I do pay more attention to is personality types. Like especially having researchers on the team, they're always like my quiet powerhouses that like I really try to activate as much as I can. So
I have a personal pride of last year actually, because I went to Saudi Arabia to run the design sprint, and I really didn't know what to expect at all there. Culture-wise, and and I had so many questions, and I was like, can I even play some music? And there were so many things. And the first thing what was amazing to me is that women and men were working together in sprint teams, and half of the teams were actually led by women. Like the decider was a woman.
Yeah.
In Saudi Arabia, and I was seriously amazed. So there is hope.
One more
if I can
thing.
jump in there quickly, like I work in the Middle East, so I'm like Rob knows, I've been in the Middle East for 7 years now. So I do a lot of work in the United Arab Emirates, Saudi, Pakistan. So I totally agree. It actually has changed a lot in the last few years, and I think there is a lot more women in the last few years than there was when I first moved out here.
The craziest experience I ever had was running a sprint with a Japanese company, and I think the women had to get almost permission from their male managers to interact with me. I was like, I thought they were kidding. We're not kidding. So I had to quickly catch up.
Wow. Yeah, that's hardcore.
Thank you very much. Yeah. Well, I know that Ying is doing some explorations on that area. So there's clearly, Ying, a lot of work to do. So I think you're on the right track.
I've got follow-up questions, but I know that you're out of time.
We're at time.
Yes, I will follow up via LinkedIn. Thank you.
Yeah, do that.
Rob, Jay, and Steph. Thank you.
Thank you for the great question, Ying. And yeah, we are at time. So what I'll do is enable the soundboard for everyone so we can thank Rob, Jay, and Steph in style and hit all the whistles and the bells for their time.
It never gets boring, right? It never.
Thank you so much for your time, Rob, Jay, and Steph. This was really great. And thanks everyone for joining and for the thoughtful questions. And we'll see you around in one of our next events.
Thanks, everybody.
Stay creative.
Thanks so
and
much.
run those sprints.
Guys.
Cheers, guys. Thank you.
See you guys.
Bye.